Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back. We are live from Los Angeles, and this is your host, Young Brando, talking watches tonight on a Friday night. We are going to go back to a topic that I started attending to at the beginning of the weekend. Sorry, I skipped so many days again, but I'm back here. We're going to talk about the official nominees of the GPHG 2025. Hopefully, we will have some time to talk about some other news, maybe some of the new releases from the Geneva Watch Days that is currently happening. Um, if you want me to do that, it would be great if you would chip in to the humble goal we have here. 5 super chats of $5 or more in the first hour. That will certainly get us um, onto the next hour and beyond. Hey, Maldives, nice to see you, man. Sorry I've been out of the loop, but hopefully, hopefully I'm coming back. I'm dealing with so much shit these days that I don't want to inflict that. This is supposed to be um, part of my escape from all that. So I'll try to lean harder into it, and hopefully I'll have some exciting content specifically for you next week. That's what I'm shooting for, anyways. All right, let's jump back right in. I did do the first half pretty much when it comes to the nominated timepieces, but I don't quite know whether I should start from the beginning. Um, I don't know. Tell me in the chat if you want me to start from the beginning. We're going to look at the so called Oscars of the watch industry, the official nominees, which are finalists in another language. We sifted through the larger list of submitted watches earlier, just a couple of months ago. I will be happy to start again, kind of go one by one. Maybe I'll do the ladies, um, finalists for ladies' watches, go to mechanical clock, ladies' complication, challenge, so on and so forth. So we'll weave our way into it that way while you guys make that decision or while you think about it. Please hit the like button, and I'm going to maybe warm up as I do by talking about some of the content that I posted recently on Instagram. I know a lot of you follow me on there, anyways, but you know, we're already in another race weekend now, and in Monza, but this was back from the Dutch Grand Prix where Pascal Siakam, the NBA champion, was visiting some friends, and he was visiting specifically the Red Bull garage, and of course, Red Bull being the team of Max Verstappen, they were playing hosts in a way, and he was wearing a beautiful Royal Oak on a leather strap. It was the 41 millimeter from 2 generations ago, but I really love this combo in the current iteration as well. There's something, the pink gold, of course, is often paired with shades of brown, which I think it serves as a beautiful complement too. But I'm very much into this stark contrast between a black dial and a pink gold case. Gégé Lecoutre is another brand that uses this particular combination really well, but AP does it just as well. This is 15400 OR, but obviously in today's world that would be 15500. And honestly, I like the newer design a little bit more. I thought I would somehow miss the AP logo, the initials. But over time, I've kind of gotten used to this more minimalist dial design. Obviously, we don't need to see the word automatic. as a point of balance, perhaps that was serving a purpose. But once you remove the initials and put just a simple signature up there, maybe you don't need so much to counterbalance it, even though, I don't know, the negative space still kind of irritates me, but that's another discussion altogether. And I was wondering what you guys think about Royal Oaks on a leather strap, because it's kind of contrary to the very origins of the design, of course, but I kind of like it. You guys know I've loved my 14800s for quite some time now. I've been with it for a year and a half now, and it's easily, along with my Submariner, the watch I wear most often. When making these kinds of statements, of course, I yearn for my friend Aussie expats precision. I wish I was as committed enough with my spreadsheets and everything else that I could, table it and give you the exact numbers, but you'll have to take my word for it. Night Diver says high-end watches and casual wear is peak aesthetic. Yeah, but look, my only objection to that is seeing seeing men's naked feet in wrist shots, right? I'm all about. I like keeping things a little more formal or on the conservative end. If I'm really being honest, when it comes to how I put myself together on most days. But that being said, I think, yeah, luxury watches and casual clothing, some version of athleisure, you might say, is a great aesthetic as well. And I love, as much as everyone else, wearing a nice football jersey, and by that I really mean a soccer jersey, since my audience is still mostly American. So I do love it. I do love it. I think honestly, people, if there are any barriers to be broken down in the industry, perhaps it's that, but maybe it has already become that way, right? It's like with burgeoning content on social media, there's nothing you see more often than seeing people in casual wear and great watches. And casual doesn't necessarily need to mean sloppy, right? I mean, that goes without saying. So as long as I don't see someone's flip-flops or naked foot as part of the composition, I'm all for it. That was Pascal Siakam and his 41 millimeter Royal Oak on a leather band. I think that's a beautiful combination as well. This is Simone Ashley. You might know her from Bridgerton. You might know her from Sex Education, which is another series. You might have also seen her from in the F1, the movie. She was actually supposed to be Damson Idris's girlfriend in the movie, but apparently her entire role was cut basically, and her appearance now is listed on IMDb as herself for just a cameo, which is a shame because I would have loved to seen her as part of that movie. But hey, she looks great wearing a classic prep style outfit for the US Open earlier in the tournament. It's a cotton crew neck with the famous, or now famous, polar bear, and she's also wearing IWC Ingenieur in 35 millimeters in 18 karat pink gold with that gold toned champagne dial, which I think is a beautiful combination. And even though it is a pretty unisex watch, I've actually seen this watch and documented it on Damson Idris's own wrist. But I somehow feel that this is finally the generation where there are models of the Ingenieur that women can easily wear, right? Because it's perhaps the most masculine of Jarajanta's 70s creations, if you think about it, right? There's something quite edgy and brutalist about the Royal Oak, but it had a feminine version. It had a Royal Oak 2 before that decade even ended. Of course, that was iterated by Jacqueline Dimier and not Jaragente himself, but you get what I mean. I guess the Nautilus, with its more rounded design, has some ingrained femininity to it anyways, but the Ingenieur was, the tool watch of those, chic designs that he came up with in the 70s. And I think finally in this generation, we have some version of it that feels like it can easily look great on a woman's wrist. And there we go. It actually does. That was Simone Ashley wearing the IWC Ingenieur Automatique 35 in pink gold. I mean, obviously, it's part of the movie tie-in, I think, and I'm glad they kept her on board, at least with the watch endorsement. If you watch soccer, you know that it's a little bit of a fashion show when the French national team gets together. Hey, Ryan Offrey. Shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shouldn't be here really if I'm saying that, but hey, hope we'll be forgiven at some point. Night Diver says not every woman can pull off masculine watches. Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Even though I would like to believe that there's no such thing as men's watches really, but yeah, imagine something like this, right? I can't pull off a Royal Oak concept myself because it's just way too large for my skinny wrist. So, but hey, it doesn't face Jules Koundé, who is right back for the French national team and Barcelona. And he has a great watch collection, by the way. I have gone through some of the pieces in his collection as he wears them on these different kinds of occasions. But this is probably the most modern, even though it is, in a way, strictly speaking, at least a neo vintage watch now, because this was the first Royal Oak concept. It's the CW1 or the Concept Watch 1. At that time, it was just part of the 30th anniversary of the model. It was probably at the time thought of as a sort of one-off, a limited run of 150 examples. It is now its own model line. It's now its own collection that actually Royal Oak used extensively for collaborations as well. Think of the Marvel pieces that came out, and certainly not only that, but this was the beginning. It was a design that was made by Claude Emenega, who later also had a stint as creative director at Audemars Piguet for a very short time. But this was back in 2005, I want to say. If it wasn't 2004, I'm sorry, I'm slipping on the actual date there, which I didn't include in the narrative. Shame on me. The movement was, of course, made by Renaud et Papy, and no, it's actually 2002, because it's right after the first Richard Mille watch came out, which, of course, in terms of its movement design, was also achieved at Renaud et Papy, which was at the time already integrated into AP as APRP, as their high horological workshop, or high complications workshop, I should really say. Um, and the material that they used is very interesting here. It's like mainly cobalt-based alloy for the actual case, called Alacrite 602, until then used for mostly aerospace applications and the medical industry. The octagonal bezel itself was actually rendered in titanium with the bolts in white gold as they usually use, and the strap was a Kevlar strap, so kind of perhaps putting a pin or putting an exclamation mark on that whole aesthetic of material experimentation, which of course they should get credit for. It's not just an aesthetic. When you think of it, when it comes to the Royal Oak concept, the only part of it that really ties it into the larger aesthetic is the octagonal bezel, right? Everything else is quite original, actually, in terms of how it's executed, in terms of how it's finished. So it's quite interesting, and there's, you know, the design of the tourbillon bridge itself is very unique. There's a linear power reserve indicator, and what you have on this triangular island at 6 o'clock is actually kind of a mode indicator, which you can toggle with the help of this crown pusher at 4. And it basically has 3 modes. H for heure, or time setting, right? You know, so you are basically switching between different modes of using the crown. So when it's at H, you can use the crown for time setting. Where it's at N, which is French for neutre, neutral, right? You know, the crown doesn't do anything. When you toggle to R, which is remonté, which allows you to use the crown for winding. It is a hand-wound movement after all. And you have opposite that at 12 o'clock, dynamograph, which is a torque indicator. Basically, it gives you an indication of how much torque there is in the mainspring, which, again, a lot of these things, a lot of the applications of these kinds of modes and functions and indicators, all of this is something you see in Richard Mille, of course, more widely, and which AP itself started implementing more and more after the 40th anniversary, really, after 2012, building the Royal Oak concept as a collection in its own regard. And, you know, this, again, whether you like it, whether it's your aesthetic, and I don't like it, it's not my aesthetic. I always appreciate the existence of this particular collection. After all, AP still has a 10% stake in Richard Mille as an enterprise, but I don't think AP specifically and Renaud Papi, which is now Audemars Piguet Le Locle, doesn't always get credit for what has been generated for RM. So it's important to remember these parts of the history. Dr. Bob's Night, I missed you, man. How are you doing? Triple sensor Mudmaster GWG 2000. Is that what you think this looks like, Dr. Bob? Patek Chris wearing my leather strap, 5726 today. What are you guys wearing? Okay, it was an answer to that. I'm wearing my Reverso Condates. The 34, if we're talking about the new Lange pieces that were introduced at recently, earlier this year, I want to say, those actually look pretty good. I think it's the case design, right? It still feels quite substantial on the wrist, even though they are the new 1815s are 34 millimeters in diameter. Thank you, Patek. Thank you, man. Night Diver is wearing the Al Qaeda standard issue Casio F91W. Patek Chris says that must have been a Jérôme Lambert era JLC. That was the. Sorry to geek out again, but I can't help it. This is kind of like the whole reason for this channel's existence, after all. But the grand dates, the base movement of the grand dates, was actually the core of the 70th anniversary piece, right? And it came out in 2002. It was made for 2012. Of course, 2002, I think you have already noticed there, if you know your history enough. 1931 is Reverso's official date of introduction. Apparently, the 8-day movement was such a pain to engineer in the right way and execute that they couldn't actually deliver it on the official 70th anniversary. So a lot of the 70th anniversary releases were, made in 2002, including the grand dates, of which the big achievement is from the 8-day power reserve. Yes, going back to your question, Night Diver, it has Richard Mille DNA, or you can say Richard Mille has Renaud et Papy DNA. Honestly, I don't know how much of the R&D, how much of the research and development they moved in-house right now, but up until very recently, they were still using movements designed and conceived for them by Renaud et Papy. So for there to be an overlap between the Roylo concept series and Richard Mille, for them to have this shared DNA is because their movements were designed at the same workshop, which still is part of AP and which was founded initially by Gillo Papy and Dominique Renaud. I'm sorry, I forgot his first name for a second. This is my first international post and first collaboration that I did with an account called Turkish Watch Spotter. It's İlkay Gündoğan, who used to be the German national team captain and the captain of the Manchester City team that completed that elusive continental treble in 2023. And that final actually happened to be in Istanbul, and now he came back to Istanbul to sign for a team that he calls his childhood love. And he was wearing the platinum Rolex Daytona, the Platona, so to speak, from the last generation with the luminous dial. I still can't believe that people hated this thing when it came out, and it took that it was a slow burner. It seems such an obvious choice. I still think that the platinum Rolex Daytona is probably the hottest watch that Rolex has in its catalog, without counting the off-catalog models, such as the Le Mans Daytonas and the Jam Set pieces. By the way, I drop the links in the chat each time. So I do appreciate it if you would, give it a few likes, when you can, if you can. If you want comments, there's always a prompt in my posts. So please. You'll have to excuse him and blame me, Night Diver, because I watched basically the entire video of his arrival. And even though I spotted the watch, I just couldn't get a good screenshot of it until he quickly touches his nose. And that's it. He doesn't pick at it. I know it's not the most flattering picture, but that was the only photo where I could get him and the watch in the same frame. The wrist shot I got when he was autographing a few jerseys. So don't blame Ilkay. It's my fault. It's my mistake. No, I'm saying I take the blame. I take the blame. It's not his fault. He's not cleaning his nose. Patek Chris, this is a beautiful question. 349 New Zealand, thank you so much. Your favorite Carole Forestier Casapi era Cartiers? I think it has to be the Tortue Perpetual Calendar. Let me see if I can find a good picture of it. I think most people might hate it because the dial is too busy. Maybe it's a little bit of an overkill when it's open worked or skeletonized. But I've always liked this watch. And I think she also had made a perpetual calendar tourbillon. Trying to remember what kind of watch that was in. That may have been a rotonde. Let me see. I'll show them both. So here it is. Oh yeah, that's it. We'll get to the rotonde next, but I think this is my favorite. I'm just a sucker for any perpetual calendar with a retrograde indication as well. So, this checks those boxes. The weekday indication is retrograde. The date is a pointer date along the periphery of the dial. Months at 12 o'clock with the leap year indicator. You have the classic Tortue case. The Rotonde is completely crazy, but it's awesome how it combines both the perpetual calendar and the tourbillon. And it's kind of mesmerizing, right? In the way that it all happens in that circle, right? With this form of indication, where you have just those switching frames that all coil around the tourbillon cage, which of course has that wishbone style Cartier logo, and which does serve, I think, with the help of a blued. No, not blued, perhaps. It's just like, the edge of that wishbone, I think, that kind of acts like as a second sand. Hey, Robert Wood. Nice to see you, man. Please hit the like button. You say you also like the Rotonde annual calendar. The Astro Tourbillon Rotonde is mind-blowing, even if on another planet, to Cartier DNA. Yeah, the Rotonde in general, it's probably one of the least Cartier of Cartier designs. It is a round watch for the most part. So, but the Astro Tourbillon, I don't know, those complications. I mean, this, but again, speaking of people who don't necessarily get credit for what they have done, Carole Forestier Casapi was also the person who came up with the concept of the freak of Ulysse Nardin freak, which I think in the way that she designed it, in the way that she executed it, was a little too power hungry. So they had to contract Ludwig Oechslin to rework the design. But that's also for Hestia Casapi. Indeed. Night Diver says retrograde is rarely seen, and I would say difficult to make since it's harsh on the components of the movement. Yeah, I mean, that's also a problem you face with a lot of chronograph movements, right? That's why it's also very difficult and not always common for every single brand to have their own chronograph movement, because without even talking about flyback or split second or whatever else that you would add on that chronograph base, you already have that snapback function as the chrono, as the stopwatch concept of the chronograph, right? So it's that's one of the reasons that a lot of brands don't dare or don't want to bother with designing, with making their own chronograph movements. Continuing on the football football theme, I wanted to say, this is Eden Hazard. Again, I guess because his downfall was so sudden and so steep, sometimes people forget how good he was for Chelsea. And being a Spurs fan, I absolutely hated him simply because he was so good. And he was a host to the UEFA for one of these social media challenges, right? Stay silent until you hear a better dribbler than Eden Hazard. And he didn't speak until Messi's name came up, which I think is absolutely fair. And he was wearing a pink gold Rolex Daytona on the oyster bracelet with the meteorite dial, kind of this space panda configuration. And honestly, that helped me muse a little bit about why I like Rolex's Meteorite dials. There are brands that do perhaps more interesting things, use galvanic baths to give it different colors, use it in different parts or aspects of the dial rather than just using a whole slab as a backdrop or as the main dial. Rolex uses it in its prestige models like the Daytona, like the Day Dates, but it has this sort of almost neutral treatment to it. It's not untreated, of course. I think there's even a little bit of lacquering that Rolex uses to bring out those natural striations, the geometric, largely triangular, you might say, patterns that you can see on the meteorite itself. And that this is actually a meteorite they were at least displaying in the Griffith Observatory. I'm not sure if it's still held in exhibit there, but it's basically the only meteorite they found in the Los Angeles area, and you can see, this is the kind of natural pattern that you also see on meteorite dials. I'm glad Rolex brought it back. Speaking of things that come back, this is the Spinal Tap. They're back, and they were sharing the 10 plus things that they can't live without with GQ. And Christopher Guest, who of course plays Nigel Tufnell, and who is actually an hereditary baron in the UK, wears a Rolex GMT Master with the black bezel, which probably is as aristocratic as you can get with a Rolex. It's the most supposedly boring combination you can get, but I guess because of that, it has a certain appeal. I love how people change up the bezels in these vintage and neo-vintage examples, and that's part of their charm. So it takes an extra set of balls, you might say, to keep it black. But then again, of course, it reminds me of that famous scene, right, where the Smell the Glove album finally comes out, and they receive the first delivery, and the cover has been changed, and it becomes their black album, right? Rather than that depiction of a woman smelling the glove, it is just a pitch black thing. So I guess this watch is also worthy. The reference 1675, the black dial, black, black, black, none more black. That is the GMT Master Nigel Tufnell is wearing. And 10, yes, 10 plus means it goes, but this goes to 11. That's right. That's my absolute favorite scene, of course, in that movie. This was great too. Lautaro Martinez, the Argentine striker and captain of the Serie A team, Internazionale, was back with the selection. I think he actually just superseded Diego Armando Maradona in terms of the goals he scored with the national team, which is, of course, a huge achievement. And he was getting familiar again with the World Cup. And he was wearing actually the so-called John Mayer 2, right? Which is a great combination to wear with the World Cup. Because when you look at it, the World Cup itself is pure gold with a malachite base. So it is that combination of gold and green, which Rolex is famous for executing. And this watch, of course, has all that famous combination of what John Mayer picked out in the previous generation, that combination of gold and green. But it kind of makes the watch a little more, I guess, conservative, dressy, and luxurious looking. The 116 reference was, I think, a little more sporty with the red accents on the subdials and the single green colored dial. This is a little more, yeah, it's a little classier, let's put it that way, with the champagne subdials for the chronograph registers. Pardon me. And it absolutely reminded me of that iconic picture. This is the opening ceremonies of Germany 2006, where Pele was lifting the World Cup, and of course he was wearing his classic Rolex Day Date. The watch has a champagne dial, but that's probably the watch that you would want to wear if you are lifting the World Cup, right? The Day Date with a malachite dial. If you can swing that, there's nothing that would pair better. Maybe it's a little matchy, but anyways, tell me what you think in the comments to this post, and I posted the link again right there. Oh, I didn't realize I posted so many football players recently. Another guy I absolutely despised, but deeply respect as a football player, Jamie Vardy. Vardy, of course, was the talismanic striker for Leicester City for so many years, and you know, when Leicester won the title, of course, it made for one of the best stories in football ever, really, but certainly in recent time in the industrial age of football. But you know, that was probably our only reasonable chance of ever winning the Premiership. I'm not sure if we will ever get it again. And I remember Jamie Vardy always reminded the Spurs fans of that lack. So I don't begrudge him for that, though. That's how you are supposed to behave as a professional football player. Of course, it's all about your team and nothing else. He recently signed for the Serie A minnows, Cremonese, from the northern Lombardy city, Cremona, and they have a beautiful violin museum there. So they made him visit that and kind of present him as a work of art as well. I think it's a great concept, great idea, but I was mostly thinking about the matching pair of aquanauts that the Vardys wore. That's his wife behind him. She is wearing a 5268 pink gold. This is an aquanaut luce, so it has that porthole style bezel that's set with brilliant cut diamonds. I think about 48 of them. And he was wearing the new travel time, which is rendered in 18 karat white gold and has that slate blue gray dial that matches again quite beautifully with the rubber strap that it is delivered on. And I had to, again, speaking of getting screenshots from videos, I had to sit through this extended conversation, which they aptly named Not This Again. It's Bobby Altoff with Drake. But at least Drake was wearing something interesting. This is a watch that he kind of debuted, flaunted, showed in one of his relatively recent Instagram posts, with this hazy wrist shot. But it is actually one of the new off-catalog pieces that Rolex introduced at the last Watches and Wonders. People came to call it almost immediately as the giraffe, and I think when you think of the pattern on the dial, it seems pretty obvious. Whether that was the inspiration, as we had the eye of the tiger, the panther, and whatever, whether the wildlife was the actual inspiration behind the watch or not, I think it makes for a great nickname. The pattern itself is laid out in diamonds, baguette cut diamonds as the hour markers, trapeze cut for the bezel and the lugs, the crown guards, as well as the center link of that fixed end link is set with brilliant cut diamonds as well. And this is also the first Rolex piece that is presented on an Oyster Flex bracelet in any other color than black. So it probably marks a new age for Oyster Flex as well, where they will have some more exciting combinations than just black and whatever else. So it's pretty interesting. The watch itself is in pink gold. Again, we were just talking about it. The most common sense application is combining pink gold with a shade of brown. And of course, for the giraffe, that's quite fitting, right? You have those shades of cream, brown, and with all sorts of sparkle in between. I think the reference number for the watch is 126555 TBR. But I got a few different shots of it from the interview, so I'm quite happy with the final work. Of course, there were more comments from Kendrick fans than Drake fans, I think, in the on the post, but that's to be expected. All right, let's go back to the GPHG. Please hit the like button if you could. I really do appreciate it. I don't know. Should I start from scratch? Should I just start from the halfway point? You let me know. I'll just jump back to the mechanical clock part. I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to this, but I will first count the finalists. There's the Anton Sukhanov St. Petersburg Easter egg tourbillon clock. This is the one that takes inspiration from the Fabergé egg. There's Fiona Kruger mystery box Forget Time, which is a collaboration between Fiona Kruger and Denis Flageolet, whom you would know from De Béthune, of course. There is L'Épée 1839, the Albatross, which is a collaboration with MB&F, and which I actually saw before it was sold at the MB&F lab in Beverly Hills. And then we have the Louis Vuitton Montgolfier Aero, which I think is made by L'Épée. By the way, L'Épée 1839 was bought, I think maybe already 2 years ago, by Louis Vuitton. So it's part of their watchmaking establishment. And they are really one of the biggest clockmakers today. So it's a great acquisition for Louis Vuitton. Then you have Michieletta BY21 DES 12 ME. And then you have the trilobe Le Temps Retrouvé. In terms of the design, I really like the trilobe piece, but because I saw it in action and had a chance to get myself familiar with it, I really like the albatross, which is actually designed like a Zeppelin, inspired by Jules Verne's novel and the Albatross airship, and of course Jules Verne's broader fascination with flight, with hot air balloons and other airborne marvels, so to speak. It has, of course, the time telling functions, hours and minutes. It also is an automaton, so it has 16 pairs of propellers that launch into action at the top of every hour. But it's also a striking watch. It's a chiming watch, so to speak. It chimes on the hour and has a single strike on the half hour as well. So it's a beautiful automaton. It's a great striking watch. It's also a beautiful object of mechanical arts as well. I mean, again, it's kind of cute and interesting as an object. Maybe too expensive as a toy, but certainly very, very interesting. You see, it's very easy to wind with an 8-day power reserve as well. So quite cool. So that was my favorite in the mechanical clock category. The challenge category, which I think, along with Petite Aiguille, the most interesting category always to me, because those are the watches that fall under a certain bracket in terms of their pricing. Challenge for any watch that's less than 3,500 Swiss francs at the point of retail. And then Petite Aiguille is for watches that fall between that and 10,000. So less than 10,000 Swiss francs at more than 3,500 is Petite Aiguille. Sorry. The 6 finalists are, for the challenge category, Atelier Wen, the Miasim 2024 Mou. A friend of mine has this watch. Actually, I have done an episode on Atelier Wen, I think maybe more than a month ago already, which was really interesting to me. I will try to drop the link here if you want to watch it on another occasion. And let me know what you think. Maybe leave a comment. That was, let me see. that was focused on Atelier Wen more broadly, but mostly what was at the time their new release, Ancestra. So if you want to check that out, I dropped the link to the video, and feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. There's the Bid'ah Eclipse. There's the Behrens Orion 1. There's Christopher Ward London, C1 Celestial Moon Phase, Mr. Jones. Denison Natural Stone Tiger Eye with the gold PVD finish. And then Chrono Tokyo Jubilee Sensu EOL Shirai. I think I will give it here to Bid'ah Eclipse, actually. Because I think for the price point, it's a very interesting piece, very wearable piece at 37 millimeters. It's powered by a rather generic, automatic movement, the Sellita SW3000. But it has this time-telling mode where you have a digital display for the hours, and then this rotating celestial shield that shows, or rather the arrow that travels behind that shield that shows the minutes. It's not quite a jump hour watch, perhaps, and even with a module developing that kind of mechanism at the 2,000 Swiss franc price point may have been a little bit prohibitive, but I like the aesthetics of this kind of time telling. So it's I think a good compromise. Again, interesting case design, original dial design, and if not inventive, certainly a relatively unusual way of telling time. So I appreciate Bid'ah Eclipse for its inclusion in this category, and it is my favorite, at least. Again, Atelier Wen is a great watch, but I think it's not the most exciting design. I'm a big fan of Chrono Tokyo and Denison as well, especially in terms of design when it comes to both pieces. With Behrens, I think they are doing very exciting things, using the kind of muscles that China has in terms of scaled up production. They have this beautiful collaboration, which is already all sold out, with Vienna Altair that they're showing at the Geneva Watch Days, which we might take a look at later. But yeah, I think that's another strong contender. But my favorite is the Bid'ah Eclipse. The Petite Aiguille category, another favorite, another fan favorite, you might even say, because again, it's watches that are more budget friendly. And in this case, it's Amida Digitrend Open Sapphire, Christopher Ward London C12 Loco, Ashmoser et Company, the Streamliner Alpine Mechanics Edition, which of course grows out of Moser's collaboration with the Alpine F1 team, where they had two watches basically, one for the drivers, one for the mechanics, so to speak. And then matte editions, matte 2 green, which is the first matte edition that I actually liked. Nomos Glashütte Club Sports Neomatic World Timer. And then the Otsuka Lotec number 50 Kai. And again, my choice is Otsuka Lotec precisely because it brings something new and unique to the table. You know, the other watches, I think, again, are largely great designs, unique designs, except perhaps the Christopher Ward, that bring fresh air into at least the price point. But the Wandering Hours piece, again, in this category, with their unique design language, with, I think, already a recognizable aesthetic, which for a brand that has still really not made it out of Japan, is quite astonishing, right? You know, in especially in today's global market for watches, for such a small brand that still sells watches only in Japan and by lottery, for them to have been such a big sensation so far, I think it's quite impressive. And also take a look at this. Like, they have a little video for its functioning. It actually has a seconds here. You see that disc down there is the seconds actually, and this of course shows the minutes, and the Wandering Hours display is the rest. I mean, for, you know, something like this, for the equivalent of 4,300 in Swiss francs, you know, which is less than $5,500, I think it's a quite interesting package. And I think it would be a very worthy winner of this particular category. This is the number 5 Kai of Otsuka Lotec. The next category is artistic crafts, and this is basically arts et métiers, so the traditional crafts such as gem setting, marqueterie, enamel painting, you know, everything can kind of, I think, find its place here. The 6 finalists, or rather nominees, are the Elieu Chopard Quattro Spirit 25 Straw Marqueterie Edition, Hermès Arco Rocabar de Rire, Louis Vuitton Tambour Bushido Automata, Piaget Altiplano Skeleton High Jewelry Métier d'Art, Tiffany & Company Bird on a Flying Tourbillon Azure Blossom, and Voutilainen 28 GML Soyu. In terms of my personal taste, honestly, and this is how I went through the other categories. I should have done that on today's categories too, but please indulge me. I will say what I would choose and what will probably get the cake. I think for my taste, I would have gone with the Voutilainen 28 GML Suyu, because this is like an absolutely stunning mosaic-like dial that, for the most part, is a dial that you might at first just take for maybe some sort of cloisonné enamel, but it's not. It's actually very much a dial that tries to integrate all kinds of Japanese art, especially aspects of the urushi lacquering technique. So it's it basically says here the dial draws inspiration from the motto Soyu, a coined word that is reflected in the striking contrast between blue, green, gold, and red colors. So evokes in the outer part of the dial the sea represented by the deep, clear blue-green hues, while U with the shades of gold and red in the center signifies a natural organic form symbolizing solar energy. Created using the urushi lacquering technique, it requires 1,000 hours of meticulous work. The extraordinary creation incorporates raw materials such as urushi, tree sap, kinpun, various gold powders, kirigane, cut gold sheets, kirigai, cut shell from New Zealand abalone, and the great green turban. This is a travel time watch, basically, right, where you have, of course, the local time and then a 24-hour disc, the solar disc in the middle that has an hour, 24-hour indication right here, using this as kind of an arrow for a reference time or for a secondary time zone. Of course, a classic, beautiful signature Voutilainen 28 movement with that large balance wheel beating at a lower rate for that romantic expansion and contraction. The balance bridge is stunningly finished. And the case is the classic teardrop locked case that has become Voutilainen's visual signature, even though they have by now expanded beyond it and offer a few different options. The one that might win in this category of artistic crafts, which I think would also be quite worthy, is the Hermès Arceau Rocabard de Rire. This is an automaton watch as well. And it's kind of cheeky because you have a pusher that you can use for the horse to stick out its tongue, which is a beautiful depiction of the horse, but I think the dial itself deserves some mention as well, not only because of its lively look, but also, again, because of the kinds of artistic crafts that it integrates. That backdrop of the dial is actually made from horsehair. Right, beautifully colored, variously colored, So it's the backdrop is horsehair marqueterie, and then you have this engraved miniature painting of the horse itself. And then you have the spring mechanism that's activated by the pusher at 9 o'clock that allows the horse to cheekily stick out its tongue. And, even without that silly little function, I think it's a very, very interesting piece and would be also a worthy winner in this category. The jewelry watch, again, not my métier specifically, but I will count the nominees, count the finalists, and give you a piece of my mind. The Bulgari Serpenti Eterna, Chopard Swan Lake, Dior La Thé de Dior Boisson Couture, Piaget Swinging Sautoir, Simon Brett Chronomètre Artisan Joaillerie, the emerald version. Van Cleef Arpels, the Cadenas. I don't think this will win necessarily, but I really like Simon Brett's work, and I like the way they preserved that aesthetic, which was already very unique, in presenting what is essentially a very simple, elegant time-only watch. I like the way they use gem setting for unique pieces in these series. They have just presented another unique piece in Geneva that uses rubies. This is one that uses emeralds, if I'm not mistaken. The watch itself is in platinum. Of course, it uses custom cut diamonds for the backdrop of the dial, and also emeralds. And the hands and the screws are colored in these iridescent gradations that play with those colors, from green to violet, that you can glimpse at the sparkling of the diamonds and the emeralds. I think it's really a beautifully designed piece that doesn't at all take away from the original concept of the watch, which I guess I should show the original subscription series so you can see how much of the aesthetic they preserved. Because it is already, in terms of its aesthetics, quite a lovely watch, even at its origin. But it turns out it really lends itself well to this kind of artistic gem setting. And I know, I just chose this watch probably because it's the most conventional one, probably because it appealed very easily to my sense of aesthetics. So I don't want to take it away from any of the other pieces here. I think the Serpenti is always an interesting creature, an interesting horological creature, I should say, in any of its iterations. And I really like this one too. But all that being said, and it's more like a bangle here rather than a very intricate wraparound piece. But the gem setting looks also very charming on this one as well. The final two categories, I think I'm not sure if I said anything final in terms of the chronograph either, but certainly not sports. Going back to the chronograph, my absolute favorite is the Anderson Genève world timer, which is actually a split-second chronograph. It's a reworking of a historic, vintage Venus 179 split-second chronograph movement, combining that with their world time module. Beautiful watch, housed in a very wearable platinum case that scales right under 39 millimeters, 38.8. And it's a world first, right? There are, of course, precedents of this combination of chronograph and world time. They have done it in the past themselves. Patek has done it historically and more recently with 5930 and the later iterations of it. 5935 A would be the most common, example now, but a split-second chronograph world timer is a world first. I really love it. I usually love the beautiful dials they make usually for these world time pieces. So the dial design for this particular series doesn't really excite me, but now that it's there, at least I know something that I've been clamoring for. I've been literally asking Alex personally, I'm talking about Pierre-Alexandre Eschliman, who's the CEO of the brand, to bring back some version of the world time chronograph. So I'm sure there will be more models and more variations, if not necessarily with the split-second function. I'm glad they're going this way. I'm glad they have outdone themselves by making a split-second chronograph world timer. So even if I'm not enamored by the dial design, this is still my absolute favorite in the chronograph category. And I think as another watch that might win in this category, I'll probably think of the Royal Oak concept, which not only iterates that what has become a collection in the Royal Oak concept watch, but also does that in a piece that once again pushes forward AP's own history of material experimentation with forged carbon case that integrates shades of blue with a ceramic octagonal bezel, with an open work dial that has blue rings for the chronograph registers, as well as an rejo that's rendered in that color as well for a tachymeter. I've always loved the Grand Dates, and this is also a split-second chronograph. So again, quite a beautiful piece for what it is. I know maybe it's not conventionally beautiful, but again, from a design standpoint, to me, the Royal Oak concept has a lot of appeal. It looks like a spaceship almost, and there's very little, again, beyond that octagonal bezel that ties it directly to the Royal Oak. I like it. I don't think you will find me wearing it in this life for all sorts of reasons, budgetary reasons as well. It's not really my aesthetic, but I do appreciate it from a distance. So I think that would be another potential winner that I would indicate from the lists of the nominees, the finalists, as it were. The sports watch is the one category that I didn't really speak my mind on, and I think I will leave you with that. So I will kindly ask you to hit the like button. I really appreciate that. I forgot to announce it on Instagram, which for the last few sessions brought me a lot of viewers. So I count on your support even more. Again, I thank Patek Chris for the lone super chat of the day, which is very disappointing, and I have to say even soul crushing for me, because I spend a lot of time thinking about these watches, trying to bring you the best content, and really feel that it's not really appreciated. It is what it is. But again, thank you for being here. Thank you. Just hit the like button at least. Leave me a comment once the live stream ends. Share the link and help me perhaps expand this viewership a little bit. That would really, really be appreciated. In the sports category, which is the last one we will explore today, the finalists are the Resence GMT Sports Chic Watch Type 7, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Self-Winding Chronograph that integrates the new shade of blue ceramic, the Bleu Nuit Nuage 50, Chopard Alpine Eagle 41 SL Cadence 8 HF, Grand Seiko Tokyo Lion Tentograph, Laurent Ferrier Sport Auto 79, and Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda PF Sport Chronograph Ultra Cermet. I think it will be the Chopard Alpine Eagle 41 SL Cadence HF. This is the titanium Alpine Eagle, ceramicized titanium, right, with a black textured finish, probably achieved through sandblasting. It's a limited series, and it's not only, pardon me, the material aspect that sets it apart. It's also that aesthetic is also matched in something more dynamic, arguably more sporty. Not only is it paired with a rubber strap, but it's also equipped with a high-frequency chronometer certified Chopard movement that's very light, because its main plate and bridges are also rendered from that same material, from that same ceramicized titanium. It is a bead blasted finish. The dial itself is in pitch black and also fashioned out of titanium with subtle orange accents. And it has an 8 Hertz movement, real high frequency movement. That has a lot of silicon components as well. So a very modern watch that renders or reiterates what's become one of their classic designs. Would have been very interesting for me, at least, if it didn't have that dial date window at 4:30, but that's unfortunately one of the shortcomings of a lot of more commonplace designs. But I still like it. It's a pretty cool piece. And I think my other favorite would be actually the Grand Seiko Tokyo Lion Tentograph. I love the case design on this. Again, the Tentograph itself is a beautiful high beat precision chronograph movement with a 3-day power reserve. It is Grand Seiko's first mechanical chronograph movement. So already quite fascinating and a very worthy contender for the crown in the sports watch category. But I really love the case design on this one in particular, which of course takes after a lot of the 70s inspired pieces. But that being said, it brings its own multifaceted finishing with the hard titanium case, sharply faceted in a way that evokes a lion's claws. The lion, of course, has been the symbol of Grand Seiko since 1960. It has a beautiful contrast of again, brushed and mirror polished surfaces, hairline finished, and Zaratsu polished surfaces in the Grand Seiko lingo. Beautiful pattern on the dial, which apparently also takes inspiration from the mane of the lion. It is, again, might look like a unique take on the ribbed design of other integrated bracelet watches, but in this case, it is, again, its own thing. It's paired with a rubber strap. The Tentograph movement takes its name from, of course, the fact that it beats 10 times per second. It still has a 72 hours of power reserve, as I mentioned, even when the chronograph function is used, which is remarkable. And it is, and I'm not surprised by this at all, the only 10-beat chronograph with that kind of power reserve in the industry today. Beautiful, beautiful piece, and it is also not outrageously expensive for what it provides. Pardon me, 17,500 in Swiss francs. I think it's quite a cool piece. And honestly, I think Grand Seiko needs watches like these and the more ambitious complications to really distinguish itself as a special house. Of course, since it entered the American market, I think it has already cultivated a very unique and committed fan base. But I think most consumers don't necessarily care about the quality of finishing as much as branding itself, and there's always going to be that association of Seiko with more entry level pieces. So unless you give people very unique technology. Um, Unique complications, or again, unique designs. It's hard. That's why still to this day, people almost, if they're horologically inclined, they start thinking of the spring drive, right? When they think of Grand Seiko, they think of that majestic tourbillon that won the chronometry prize a few years back in the same award um, competition, in the same competition. I think it was the Kodo tourbillon, and it was year 2022, maybe? Or no, it was 2023, probably. Let me see. Grand Seiko, Kodo, tourbillon. Oh, it was 2022. Yeah. So I think it's really watches like this that fuse together a unique design language and perhaps an impressive complication executed at a degree that is either unmatched or at least unique enough in the industry. So certainly the Tentograph in this Tokyo Lion edition does that. All right, thank you guys. Thank you again, especially to Patek Chris. I really, really appreciate you. You know, it's really tough sometimes without having the sport or sponsorship that other platforms might enjoy. I only work for my audience. It does grant me the kind of editorial independence that no one else has in the industry. But of course, the ugly part of that is, you know, night after night, I have these live streams that basically go completely unsupported, except for, you know, save for these exceptions of very generous people like Patek Chris, uh, like I Heart Maldives on other important occasions. Um, but, you know, it is important that you support the channel in one way or another. There are a few different options in the video description if you want to pursue that, but YouTube already provides a lot of different ways. You know, a channel membership is great. You know, no matter how affordable it is, it gives you access to a bunch of exclusive content, and at least it's very steady as a form of support. So it makes it worthwhile for me to have a YouTube channel at all. But if you want to support me in other ways, of course, you can always super chat or give super thanks while you're leaving a comment after the live stream ends. That's always very helpful. There are other ways in the video description, as I mentioned. If nothing else, stay subscribed here. Give me likes on the videos. Give me comments. Share the link. If you so wish, find me on Instagram as well and follow me there. You know, give me likes on the posts. Um, you know, leave comments. That always, you know, is a great way of increasing the visibility of the platform. But again, in the absence of that, please share the links at least so I can expand on this community that comes together exclusively for the love and passion for wristwatches. All I try to do here is to share my knowledge. So anything you can do to give me some support would be much appreciated. There's always another day, another live stream. I will see you in that next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll see you in the next one.